what are they calling this? The first Friday game, I believe.
Yeah.
Packers and the Eagles down in Brazil, baby. Interesting choice considering there's been a lot of like weird noise about how dangerous basically Brazil is to have a game. So nonetheless, we got another good one right after the opener here. I think is going to be fascinating here. So Packers and Eagles again. Our number is -1 in favor of the Packers. Actually, this the current spread is 2.5. This open at about 1.5. So no edge either side here. But yeah, Seth, let me get your take on this. What are you expecting offensively? Like a similar fireworks type show? Because as much as Steve wanted to hate last season, Jordan Love, top 10, baby.
Hate.
And now the Eagles, one of our kind of value plays as far as, Super Bowl futures bets go, they have Kellen Moore, and he's got his reputation precedes him a little bit. People are expecting a sizable increase in efficiency from what the Eagles put on film last year. So what do you think offensively you're going to get with these two teams?
Yeah, it's a great question. So Philadelphia was the 5th overall EPA ranked offense. Green Bay was the 9th overall EPA ranked offense. Philly was the 30th overall EPA ranked defense, and Green Bay a little bit better at 24th. So I think that this can be a shootout. I would be really curious to see, and really what this bet in my mind is what are you going to get with Jordan Love? Something we saw that's really interesting in the data was this like switch that got flipped around week 9 for Jordan Love. We observed this literal switch. It was almost as if he was like a different quarterback post week 9. And are you going to get that efficiency? We saw him go in and win a playoff game. They almost beat San Francisco, and we were getting high levels of efficiency from that offense. But if you look back earlier in the season, we weren't getting that type of play out of Jordan Love. So I don't know what happened, what clicked. Is it going to proceed into this season? I think if you're a Green Bay Packers fan, I think you're hoping that's the case. And on paper, they have the tools here. The one question I have for you guys is Kellen Moore the Grim Reaper? Like, is he your last shot? And he just knocking on your door and you're like, hey, can I be the OC right before you get fired? We're starting to see a trend here. He's the one that got fired in Dallas, but obviously we know how that story went. We saw what happened. The Chargers is going to be a trend here with Philadelphia. We've talked about it over and over, and I'm going to keep, beating the drum here because I'm just so confused. A lot of the professional sharp community is super high on Philadelphia. Most of the analytics are saying Philly is probably going to struggle, and I don't know. So I don't know. Is Kellen Moore the savior or the antichrist? I'm not sure.
Yeah, good question. For my 2 cents, I'll give it to you, is that if you juxtapose it or compare his savior worthiness against just what they did last year, who they were last year, one thing that I think is another angle to keep an eye on especially for people who are fantasy inclined, is Kellen Moore's like use of pre-snap motion. Eagles dead last in the league last year, 26% pre-snap motion. Okay. Kellen Moore's offense is historically pretty high. LA Chargers last year were number 7 overall, and he's consistently ranked top 6 or 7 everywhere he's been. And this might have contributed to some extent, I don't know how much, of the Eagles' struggles last year. They were not trying to hide anything that they were doing or trying to create some confusion pre-snap. They thought they could just line up and beat you, and that unfortunately turned out not to be the case for one reason or the other, right? So if he can implement or introduce some of that, I want to call it like smoke and mirrors type stuff, but Mike McDaniel-esque, and get guys out of position pre-snap, and then that opens the field up. I think, to answer your question directly, I think he's more of a savior than a Grim Reaper here in this case.
But this is my problem. I don't disagree with anything you just said, but Philadelphia was the 5th overall offense last year. Their issue wasn't on offense necessarily. It was on defense. They were getting torched on pretty much any middle of the field route. It's hard to win games. And we saw that Tampa Bay went into Philadelphia, I'm pretty sure, and beat them. I mean, that's an insane thing to say. And, look, I don't know which way or the other. I just don't know if Kellen Moore is the issue. Now, I know the Eagles made a lot of changes in free agency on defense, so maybe they have addressed what they need. But I don't know. If you're betting this game, you are literally betting that, and you're betting the Packers. You're betting you're getting the Jordan Love that you saw in the back half of the season. I don't know how certain you can be of that, but that's what the bet is, in my opinion.
Yeah, and then for me, like I still have a hard time conceptualizing this. And yeah, I'm a Bears fan, and yeah, I definitely hate the Packers, so maybe that's part of it. But I'm looking at this line, and it's definitely coming back down. But you're looking at, like you said, stuff that it's really strength on weakness for both teams. You're looking at the Eagles defense, and particularly their pass defense, right? So they were fifth from the bottom, so 27th in pass EPA on defense in terms of the efficiencies to gain or allow there. So that to me is very concerning if Jordan Love can go through and kind of light it up with this very young core here that we've seen the Green Bay do last year. But then also, what are we getting on the offensive side of the ball? I mean, we saw the Eagles just absolutely collapse last year. And quite frankly, I think to me, that's the most concerning part, because I can't put my finger on what the hell happened on that back half of the year. Right now, we always talked about the schedule going in from year to year and kind of how variance works with those close games we saw 2 years ago versus last year. And maybe, but that doesn't explain how this team can have an absolute collapse. I think it was against the Giants, and then just sort of fizzle their way out of the playoffs. So there's a lot of unknowns. And if you're getting any semblance of that Eagles team you got last year, then yeah, I get the Packer love. Otherwise, this to me seems like a very coin flip game again. Now, I will say the one thing I am curious about is, what is that offense going to look like with Saquon, baby? Are we just not going to, we're going to ignore, we're going to baby Barkley? But other than that, to me, this is a stay away game. I'm going to stay away from this game as much as they're telling the athletes to stay away from the streets in Brazil. So.
Yeah, that's fair. One thing I do want to point out here from a market standpoint, opened at 1, got all the way up to 2.5, and we're seeing today the 2.5 get bought down back down to 2. So we're seeing at this point in the market, Green Bay money come in at 2.5. So for all of you, wanting to kind of chase or get an understanding, sitting and hitting that resistance and seeing a ceiling and getting bought down is some good data here. The market is telling us, yeah, 2.5 is too many. It's just too much. Now we'll see what happens tomorrow. But I mean, this market's a bit more mature than all the Sunday games, because again, a Friday kickoff. So that's a pretty important move that you're not seeing it stay at 2.5. You're seeing it get bought back down. So another reason to be a Green Bay, backer. Gun to my head, you got to. I think unfortunately I got to take a square bet, and I think I have to chase that steam and bet a 2.5 if I can get it, and maybe even take a 2. I forget. We make Green Bay. I think we make Green Bay favored. We make them favored just by a point. So I unfortunately I'm uncomfortable. I guess I'm more comfortable backing hopefully a good Jordan Love than I'm willing to fade an Eagles team that I agree, Steve. I don't know what the hell happened.